Good evening, everybody. It is October 19th, 2020. This is the Owen Sound City Council. Our city manager, Tim Simmons, is not with us tonight. He's away in personal business. And Kate Allen is sitting in as the acting city manager. We did not have a closed session tonight, so we're moving into open right now. I'm going to call for additional business staff. Seeing none. Council, go ahead.
Yep, I'll have one matter on 5G, Your Worship.
5G, okay. Others? Seeing Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Worship. I'd have one on insurance increases for community businesses.
Thank you. And I'll have maybe just two items. One of them maybe just went on events and things going on. Disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Anybody? Seeing none. Confirmation of council minutes. Number 6. Councillor Tamming, I believe you have them.
Yes, I wish to move that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on September 28, 2020, as printed, be adopted.
And all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Number 7. Motion to move council into committee of the whole.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thomas, that City Council now move into committee of the whole to consider public city staff, consent agenda, committee meeting minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business.
And all in favor? That is carried. So we're now in committee of the whole. Number 8 on our agenda, we have no public meetings. At number 9, we have a deputation from Mike Tettenbaum. At Kelso Beach Amphitheater. Welcome. I'll get you to push the little Movi button, and there we've got it. Go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening, City Council and Your Worship. Thank you very much for letting me come and speak to you this evening. I am Mike Tettenbaum, a member of the Owen Sound Little Theatre, have been for many years, and Kathleen. Reject if there's a point I've missed. Kathleen's also been with the Owen Sound Little Theatre for many years. We have both been on stage. We have produced and helped produce and done technical and done many things. Owen Sound is really ingrained in our blood. And Owen Sound Little Theatre as well is ingrained in our blood. But we're here today because of COVID, because COVID-19 has shut our doors. It has hurt. We are trying to do something about it, and we have some ideas tonight that we think will help us work around COVID. And so I'm here to ask for your help with those ideas. I'm here to bring awareness of our difficulties. I'm also here outdoors instead of indoors in our theater at Kelso Beach. And I'm asking if you would consider waiving the fees for that. But I'm also here to introduce some opportunities where we can work together to help both Owen Sound Little Theatre and Owen Sound City together. We are shut down, and every year we have well over 10,000 patrons come into our doors, into the theater. And those patrons also come into our restaurants and our businesses and our lodgings. And the bars and everything in the area. It's a big hit on Owen Sound Little Theatre, as well as Owen Sound. We're hurting, and those 10,000 patrons just have stopped coming. Right now, we'd be about to launch our musical, and those musicals alone would bring close to 5,000 patrons in there, and that has stopped. But at Owen Sound Little Theatre in the Roxy, we're working hard to figure out what can we do to get around that, to get around COVID and start thinking outside the box, start thinking outside the theater. And one idea is that since our theater shut down and we can't bring patrons to our theater, well, we thought, let's bring the theater to our patrons. And the idea is, let's do outdoor theater, because outdoors will open up well before indoors will. And they're not open now, but hopefully by next summer, the outdoors will be opened and we can go and do live performances outdoors. Well, definitely well before the theaters are open up, because we have a tight theater, and to get 400 patrons, that's what we hold together, is going to be difficult in these changing times. I was producing a play that was supposed to go on in February, Much Ado About Nothing, a fabulous Shakespeare play, a lot of fun, and one, fortunately, that works fabulously as well outdoors. It's great for that. Shakespeare has been done outdoors since the start, when the Bard created his plays over 400 years ago, and it's proven to work very successfully throughout the world. We just have High Park to look forward to, Shakespeare by the Sea in Halifax. Throughout the States, there's a good dozen open-air Shakespeare theaters. It works. And so I'm excited that saying, well, let's do that here. We've got a play that we've started producing. Let's bring it out. And I've been in Owen Sound for over 30 years. I know Kelso well. Kelso Beach Amphitheater is ideal for a Shakespeare production. It's a fantastic stage. It's got the area in front. It's got the acoustics that we need, because this is all, open air. The lighting is great from when the sun is after the noonday sun comes. It's fabulous, and it would work. So I'm asking to allow us to produce a play at Kelso next summer. Of course, if COVID rules allow, waive the fees. Those fees would be, we believe, about $170, I was told, per show. We're talking 10 shows, give or take. So that's what I'm asking as well. But I'm also want to talk about the marketing opportunities that we have here, because I see this as something where we can promote the city as well as promoting Owen Sound Little Theater, where we can work together and get people to come to the city, because when they come to the city, it's not only helping Owen Sound Little Theater, it's helping all of us. The costs to the city there would be some costs. You would lose those show fees, those daily fees, but we will make sure that we will have ushers at the theater. They will pick up the trash around there. And so I think those costs would be minimal. And so that's why I'm here, is just to tell you that we've got this idea about bringing Shakespeare to Kelso Beach next summer. But what's, for me, more exciting is trying to envision this continuing, this becoming a yearly event. It may not be Shakespeare every year. It could be Shakespeare by the Bay, and that becomes a festival. Or it could be Owen Sound Little Theater, and Owen Sound joins Owen Sound Little Theater by the Bay to produce something that works outdoors. It doesn't have to be Shakespeare, it could be other plays. And I can see that working really well at Kelso, because during the times I'm envisioning between Canada Day and Summerfolk, the amphitheater is not used. It's not used much at all. So there's an opportunity where we can get another event to bring people to Owen Sound to enjoy the city, enjoy live theater, help Owen Sound Little Theater survive, because right now we're holding on by our fingernails. We've been blessed by a few years of fantastic productions, which I think most people have been to, where we've done really well. So we have a little bit in our coffers, but with everything shut down, it's scary for us. So we have to do other things, and doing theater outside is one thing that we can do. Did I miss anything, Kathleen? Thank you. So we're open for questions, ideas.
Counselor, just about called you doctor for some reason. Dr. Dodd, Councillor Dodd had his hand up first there.
I was going to say, Dr. Dodd has a nice ring to it. I think that's got a lawsuit written all over it if I start using that, though. First of all, I want to thank you both for the history that you've put into and then the time that you've put into your into the Little Theatre. My wife and I are members of the Little Theatre. We enjoy coming there. We enjoy it's a great night out. We go out for dinner. We enjoy our time with you. And I know just from what you're doing and what you're going through with the other discussions of members from your board, actually, of some of the struggles that you've been facing financially. So anything we can do to assist. Now, mind you, we'll have to I'd say we'd be looking for a report back through maybe community services to provide council with what the actual financials of that would be, and if it's if council will move forward with that idea or not. But I love the idea. I love that you guys you're thinking outside of the box to create something. I appreciate what you're doing and what you do for the community to give people like my wife and I a great time out. So I would move the recommendation and make a motion that we have a report come to community services outlining the information and the requests by Mike.
Great, thank you. So we've got a motion there. Councillor Tamming, did you have your hand up?
Mr. Tettenborn and Ms. Murphy, I just want to say that one of the saddest things for me personally and for my wife with COVID has been the end of you guys. This town speaks to itself. This region speaks through itself through theater, I think, in more ways than almost any other. And it's been deeply missed. And I commend you for this. I met my future son-in-law at Shakespeare on the Park, Julius Caesar in High Park. Okay. So wonderful things can happen. I hope you're blessed. One technical question. Have you had one of your technical people look at the amphitheater lately with the high water? And unless it, okay, sure.
No, we haven't. No, we haven't. There's lots, this is preliminary. There's lots of things to look at, what equipment we have to bring in and stuff like that, and et cetera. I don't see it as a problem because it's a very organic thing where we don't have a lot of props. We don't have a lot of lighting and sound. We might be mic'd, might not be mic'd, but that can be well away. And we do a lot of acting up away from the water. So I don't see that as a problem. I'm an engineer as well. Technically, I don't see an issue, but definitely before we get too far into it, we would have our technical manager take a look at it and say, do you foresee any difficulties?
Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
Thank you, Worship. Just to Councillor Tamming's point, that's all been fixed. The water, the stone has all been installed there, so that's all been looked after. Just a question, is this a full commitment to doing this in the summer, or if the COVID rules allow you back in the Roxy, will you go back into the Roxy, or will you still be doing the
I think this is, it's hard to say. I'd have to make sure that the board would approve that. I believe they would. It's a full commitment from me as producer for doing this in Shakespeare in the Park. It's a full commitment from our director. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight, but she loves the idea. She wants actually this to go outdoors instead of indoors. So right now, the board is saying, yes, we're doing it outside.
I'll just comment, Councillor Tamming, that this production that Mike's speaking to is one that was on the original OSLT playbill for 2021. So we were supposed to run February 21. As you can imagine, our playbill has completely been disrupted by COVID. So I think we are all trying to think how we can get all of our shows either back on the stage or out in the park. We want to be creative. So I would suspect that it could be something that even if we could stage it in the theater, I think this would give us, and then maybe going forward, having that opportunity again. So.
Councillor Koepke.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming to us with this idea and the creativity behind it. I'm certainly looking forward to the report with all the details in it. My husband and I, too, are season ticket holders and enjoy the plays that are put on by the Little Theatre. And we have such great talent in this area that it just amazes me how many drama festivals they've won, and they've done very, very well. So I look forward to getting that report and the details in it, and hopefully we'll have something going. Thanks.
Anyone else over there? Go ahead.
To start sounding like a broken record. Wow, what a great idea, you guys. Thanks for coming. But it really is, and I think that it just highlights the importance of thinking outside of the box during COVID. I think that, we're in for a couple of years of different kind of living. And so, it's important to actually find a way to continue on. And we all know the importance of theater in the well-being of any community. So I commend you for your decision. And I'm kind of excited by the future's prospects, but I'm not sure if there are any good local stories you could tell, and sound. If only there was something, if we had something like Anne of Marlin Towers, it could become an institution locally. Anyway, thanks for coming.
Disclosure of... This is great. It's kind of ironic. I was talking to Ms. Coulter a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about things we can do out here in the Market Square. And when I lived in Edmonton in the mid-'80s, Phoenix Theatre, under the direction of Bob Baker, I believe at the time, did Soap on the Rocks every Friday night for a couple of summers. I think it would have been probably 9 o'clock at night on a Friday night. It was summertime. It was indoors. It was only 1 hour. It was improv, and it was a story around this little broken down apartment building in the west end of Jasper Avenue that everybody knew what the building was. And it was all these different characters that lived in that building in sort of the plot to it. But anyway, it was a really neat idea, and it's I think it would work here too. So it's great to see theater being considered outdoors and in our community. The Little Theater has been around how many years now? 50. It's over 60 now. Yeah, amazing. It's quite a legacy. So thank you for coming and presenting to us. I'm going to call the question in just a minute. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to go back to Travis's request for a report to committee. All in favor? And that is carried. Number 10, public question period. I understand we received a couple of questions. Go ahead.
Yes, through your worship, Ellie Sparnay, an Owen Sound resident, submitted several questions relating to the report about Stony Orchard and Timber MacArthur Park. I will read the questions verbatim. Number 1, when extending 23rd Street East, we will lose the natural surroundings that is there now. We know most, if not all, of the land mentioned will be bulldozed flat, and also if the city decides to put in a play structure, all of the transformations will change the whole ambience of the park. Will councillors consider that when many citizens love the atmosphere of the park as it is now? It is not just a small piece of land, it is part of our environment, which we fought for the city to buy over 30 years ago. Number 2, there are a lot of construction and future construction, 8th Street East, happening in this city that will generate lots of taxes. Is it so important to make more money by taking away natural park from us? I hope the councillors and city staff members listen to their citizens. Number 3, how many citizens who signed no to the sale of our parkland on petitions do we need for staff and council members to also vote no to the developer getting 1.3 acres of our parkland? Are the petitions looked at, and would they be part of consideration of council's vote? The last question, a Zoom meeting is not ideal for most citizens. Could the public meeting take place in the Bayshore so that there's plenty of room for social distancing and gives Owen Sound citizens a chance to be heard?
Thank you. I think what we'll do is stand that down because I think it's going to be covered in the report and what I think will be coming out of the report. Was there another set of questions?
Yes, there's another question here. Thank you. This question is from Maida Pelchik-Reed, who is also an Owen Sound resident. Ms. Pelchik-Reed asks, has there been any consideration given to redesigning the subdivision plan on the Stony Orchard area so that 23rd Street East would not continue past Dominique Savio School? This would avoid the city needing to pay $107,000 in development costs as stated in the report. Could the subdivision be redrawn with cul-de-sacs where 6th Avenue East and other unnamed street meet the 23rd Street East road allowance? The original subdivision plan was made in the 1980s, and I believe it should be subject to updating.
Great, thank you. And again, I think that's going to be covered by the report. So if we can move on, and I'll try and remember to come back to those just to make sure. So next in our agenda at number 11 is correspondence received, and we have no correspondence, so we're down to number 12.
Thank you, Your Worship. During the consultation for the Ridgecrest subdivision, the applicant had indicated an interest in purchasing and developing lands on the north side of 23rd Street East to allow in part the road to be double loaded. These are the lands shown in red on the screen in front of you. Currently, as you can see by the air photo, 23rd Street has been constructed about 2/3 of the way along the frontage of St. Dominique Savio School. Ridgecrest Subdivision, which is the subdivision on the south side of 23rd Street, was given draft plan approval in the late 1980s. It includes 62 lots as well as blocks for roads, and the yellow area dedication that has been dedicated to the city where the trail can be found today. The Ridgecrest subdivision can be developed without the city lands or with the city lands. Without the city lands, the city would be responsible for sharing the cost of the construction of the road as the developer or the owner of lands on the opposite side of the road. In November of 2019, Council had considered a staff report and asked that we move forward to work through the steps outlined in the Recreation Parks and Facilities Master Plan, where parkland is considered for disposition. Attachment 3 to the staff report does provide a correction in the steps. There are 9 steps with the addition of assessing parkland supply. The assessment of parkland supply was included in the November report and again in the report you have before you this evening. So the purpose of tonight's report is to examine current conditions of this parkland, to look at how the lands were acquired, review the supply of parkland, share survey results and other feedback, and then have council consider potential options. In terms of current conditions, because the area is quite large, we divided it into 5 sections. This linear open space extends from 16th Street in the south end to 28th Street along the top of the bluffs, sometimes dipping down to 3rd Avenue East below the bluff. So looking at each of the areas, Area 1, 16th Street to 21st on the west side of 5th Avenue on top of the bluff, 19.63 acres. Has a new playground just this year. It's a passive park with beautiful views down towards the harbor, and it does have an informal trail. Area 2 is from 21st to 23rd Street. It does dip down to 3rd Avenue, and it is bounded on the east side by the Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Development. It's just over 6 acres inside. There's a hard-packed stone dust trail. This is an area where there's a storm outfall, and you'll see the bridge across that storm outfall in this section. The most narrow section in the yellow, or Area 2, is the land that was dedicated as part of the Ridgecrest subdivision. Area 3, I won't spend a lot of time here, but these lands are owned by Hydro One, and they, the city's trail does cross in part those lands. Area 4, this is the area under consideration. It's 23rd north to north of 25th. It's just almost 17 acres. On the east side are the 2 schools and residential neighborhoods. It has several hundred meters of trail and several scenic vistas in that section. The most northerly section, Area 5, is an oblong shaped. It's 25th Street A north to the pedestrian walkway really at Malibu Hill, just over 8 acres, over 200 meters of trail, and again, lots of scenic vistas, and a real mix of woodland and grass, and this is the section that features that dry stacked stone wall. In terms of the acquisition of the lands, I'll talk a little bit later about the 1989 official plan amendment that established the vision for a linear park. But it was that vision that then created the need for the lands to be acquired in this area through the 80s and 90s. Some sections were purchased, others were acquired through a development process, a plan of subdivision or site plan approval, including some from Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit, Ridgecrest, and then the subdivisions in that purple section at the north end. There were no restrictive covenants discovered in our title search that would prevent sale of the lands in the blue section. In terms of the land use planning policy, in 1984, there wasn't a lot of growth pressure. But by 1989, the city was facing significant growth pressure in this area, and Official Plan Amendment number 3 was adopted, and it created a secondary plan for this area that established with the community, among other things, the park requirements for this East Bluffs planning area. The 2006 official plan designated these lands open space and hazard. You'll see the dark green is the hazard lands along the bluff, with the lighter green being the open space, mostly above the bluff. The plan speaks to the linear park, and the plan states that the city shall use the area designated open space on Schedule A1, which is the schedule on the screen, labeled Stony on the bounds of the East Bluffs planning area, but will be developed in a manner also to provide local service. The park will be developed to preserve the natural character of the site, and park amenities, including parking, will be established through the future Parks Master Plan. The function of the park was validated in our survey results. We heard lots from residents who live in the immediate area, but we also heard from people who live in other places in Owen Sound, as well as those who live beyond the municipal boundary. One of the public questions is about the Ridgecrest Subdivision. It was, as I mentioned, draft plan approved in the late 1980s. The parkland has been dedicated as part of the subdivision process, and the first phase of this subdivision has actually been registered, and there are a few homes built in that first phase. So both the 1989 official plan amendment, which is the map on the left on your screen, as well as the 2006 official plan for the East Bluffs planning area, showed the area of the Ridgecrest subdivision and the road alignment and pattern as it is proposed and as it was approved by the ministry. In terms of the supply of parkland, the Parks and Facilities Master Plan includes an inventory and standard of parkland provision, or the requirement for parkland per 1,000 capita. On the left, we have the overall parkland map by category citywide, and on the right, it zoomed into that East Bluffs planning area. So the steps in the master plan ask us to examine the impact of removal of any parkland on the parkland supply. And the table shows in red the land-based impact on parkland if the half a hectare of parkland were to be considered for sale and removed from the inventory. With the removal of this land, the parkland standard is still achieved based on the 2016 census population, which was the basis for the 2019 master plan. In terms of play structures, the master plan examines play structures, and the Stony Orchard Park Timber MacArthur Park area is to be examined for the development of a local playground. The area in red at the north part of your screen is circled as a neighborhood that is to be examined for the provision of a local playground. So step 3 of the process outlined by the master plan talks about surveying residents to gather data on park usage. With this in mind, we mailed 680 surveys directly to residents within 500 meters. We also did a media release and social media, and all of this encouraged people to read the background material and complete the survey. There were both online surveys as well as hard copies. We dedicated a tile on the main page of the city's website, and it included complete project information. 799 people responded to the survey, which is a pretty great turnout. I'll touch on some of the highlights from the survey, but first I want to acknowledge some frustration with the survey. Step 3, as I mentioned, was really geared at how people or gathering data on how the park is used, and individuals were frustrated by the lack of questions like, should the land be sold? And really that question is intended to be answered later in the steps outlined in the master plan. In terms of the survey results, when asked how they received the notice, 27% indicated that they received the notice directly from the city, with 72% reporting that they'd heard about it another way, with social media leading that result. In terms of where people lived, 84% of respondents report being from Owen Sound, although this number is a bit questionable given that it was skipped by 218 respondents. Do you use Timber MacArthur Park or Stony Orchard Park? And I think this is an important question. 87% of the respondents noted using the park. 23% used it every day and 30% used it at least once a week. When probed what they used it for, they spoke of walking and hiking, scenic views, enjoying nature, or running and fitness. When asked about an amenity or a feature that would add to their enjoyment or use of the space, 70% said nothing is required. Of the 30% who said yes, the suggestions included leaving the area natural, which is arguably the same as the first answer, adding benches, waste and recycling, or a small minority of people noted a playground. In terms of other input, I think the clerk has been in touch with council to share with you information from 2 petitions, as well as full correspondence that was received on the matter, which was attached to this evening's staff report. In terms of options to consider, the first option is maintaining the status quo or not proceeding with the remaining steps identified in the Recreation, Parks and Facilities Master Plan for the potential sale of the parkland, essentially ending the process. Next, adding a playground using the funds from a land sale to fund those improvements. So keeping in mind, we have this area identified for a provision of a local playground and developing a natural type of playground. Next, we could add a playground without selling the land. Recall that most appreciate the space, or 70%, as it is based on that survey. So despite the master plan identifying this as a neighborhood that should be examined for a neighborhood park or playground, it's not supported based on the survey responses. And lastly, adding benches, waste and recycling receptacles. So the recommendation in the report, Your Worship, is that in consideration of the staff report, that council would receive the report, including acknowledging the receipt of the public survey results and petition, and that you would not proceed with the remaining steps identified in the Rec Parks and Facilities Master Plan for the sale of parkland.
Great, thank you. Someone want to move the recommendation? Councillor Thomas?
Yes, I would move that, Your Worship.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Merton.
Through Your Worship, I just want to clarify, and I know Ms. Coulter and I have had discussions about this. By not proceeding with the remaining steps, we are actually saying no to the sale of the parkland. Am I understanding that recommendation correctly?
Through Your Worship, yes, I believe you are.
Thank you.
Okay. Not seeing any other hands come up. Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Worship. I think we should just say we do appreciate all the feedback that we have received from the members of the public. You know, normally when we do these surveys, we get very minimal responses. It's very hard to get. On this land, so thank you. And thank you, Pam, and your entire team for all the work that you put into this. We were only at step 3, and there was 9 steps. So I know your team still had a lot of, well, I'm not going to say anything, but your team has done a lot of work on this, and you need to be appreciated as well. So thank you for your hard efforts too.
Well said, thank you. So I'm not seeing any other hands go up, so I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried, so that the recommendation carries. Thank you. So back to the letter. I think all the questions in that letter, everyone would acknowledge that they were covered, or both letters. Pam, I'm just making sure you did cover off the street. Yes, you did with the planning. Good. So they were covered. Thanks. 12B is Director from Public Works with regard to 10th Street Bridge dedication decision. I'm going to ask Deputy Mayor O'Leary to take the chair, and I'm going to move over.
Thank you, Your Worship. Dennis, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you. During the September 28th to 2020 council meeting, council was asked to consider choices for the dedication of the 10th Street Bridge. The choices were the Emancipation Bridge, Centennial Bridge, Reconciliation Bridge, Division Street Bridge, and the Gitche-Name-Wick-Wedong Bridge. Council chose to move forward with the Gitche-Name-Wick-Wedong Bridge as the preferred dedication. Council directed staff to provide public notice of the preferred option, to receive comments and input, and to present comments and that input to council at tonight's meeting. Public notice was advertised in the Owen Sound Sun-Times on Friday, October 2nd and Saturday, October 3rd, and public notice was posted on the city's website on Friday, October 2nd. The notice cited the preferred dedication and also included the other dedications that were considered. Residents were asked further feedback and to send the feedback to myself. To date, the city has received feedback from 72 residents and/or institutions, of which 52 were in favor of Gitche-Name-Wick-Wedong Bridge as the dedication of the 10th Street Bridge. Those in favor of the Gitche-Name-Wick-Wedong Bridge were extremely passionate and indicated our city council showed great leadership in choosing this as a dedication, and that it would be a significant gesture towards truth and reconciliation and restore a relationship of respect and friendship with the Indigenous people of our region. As such, I have actually made a small amendment to the dedication, to the recommendation, to include a third recommendation, that in consideration of staff report OP 20-041, respecting 10th Street Bridge dedication decision, City Council, 1, receives the public comments regarding the dedication of the 10th Street Bridge, 2, approves dedicating the 10th Street Bridge as the Gitche-Name-Wick-Wedong Bridge based on the public input received on the matter, and 3, approves the dedication ceremony occurring on June 21st, 2021, which is National Indigenous Peoples Day, with ceremony details to be forthcoming.
Thank you, Mr. Kapelis. Mayor Body.
Yes, I'd like to move that recommendation as read out by Mr. Kapelis. Going back, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada was established in 2008 by then Prime Minister Harper. During his term, it ran until 2015. The report was released in June 2015. It made 94 calls to action and encouraged all levels of government, which includes ours, to work together to advance reconciliation. Oxford Dictionary says reconciliation means the restoration of friendly relations and the action of making one view or belief compatible with another. And I think both of those are pretty appropriate here. A couple of weeks ago, our county, Grey County, took a big step in settling the county's participation or involvement is a defendant in a long-standing land claim by returning lands to the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. For this area, that was record-setting. It may not be record-setting right across the country, but it is a big step in the right direction. Naming a bridge in our community to recognize the history of our place and the people who have lived here is a small step to advance reconciliation in comparison, but still symbolic. Symbolic in that we're rebuilding a bridge. We're rebuilding a bridge to connect people from one side to another. As most of you know, I'm pretty proud Owen Sounder. I'm a proud Canadian, and I think we all are. We all know where we were, and we all remember that goal by Paul Henderson or Sidney Crosby. We all know how we felt when we saw that mechanical arm away out there in space with Canada and the flag written down the side. Or astronaut Hatfield, or Kenneth Taylor in the Iran hostage crisis a number of years ago. or a stage play that's ongoing in Toronto to celebrate with pride Gander, Newfoundland on September 11, 2001. These are all things that make us proud as a Canadian. But I'm especially proud of the place I was born and raised and where I've chosen to return to and where I want to live. I'm proud and often boast of the people of this place, of Owen Sound and Grey County and their accomplishments. We all know the names, we all know the stories. Nellie Mooney McClung, Agnes McPhail, Norman Bethune, Billy Bishop, Rita Colburn, Tom Thompson, Hap Day, Olympians Larissa Yurku and Jason Crone, Keenan Brothers KB Toothpicks, who hasn't bragged around the world about that one? Russell Brothers Maid of the Mist, made here. The little boats in the Abitibi in the back of the $1 bill, for those of us that remember it, also made at Russell Brothers. Kennedy's making the ship propellers during war years, of course, the Prohibition, the bootleggers, the shipping that went through this community, all the people that moved out west came through on Sound, and this is all an important part of history. I just stop and note that Agnes McPhail and Norman Bethune were in grade 12 together at OSCBI, and Billy Bishop was in grade 9 the same year, and you wonder who the teacher was that told them they could do anything. Pretty phenomenal. So as an Owen Sounder, I'm very proud of these people and the differences they have made in our country and around the world. They represent the best of us being the people from this place. They left a legacy for all of us to learn from. Very proud of our history of Underground Railway. And I wouldn't have known that growing up. I probably wouldn't have known it except for Peter Lemon pushing and bringing the festival to light and making us recognize it throughout the community. We didn't learn many of those stories in school. Black settlers began settling in what is now Grey County 200 years ago this year in 1820. We didn't recognize that enough, but it's pretty phenomenal. It's close to 20 years before the Queen's surveyors started to come through and measure up the lands. The original town crier, Daddy Hall, slave, lived to be something like 113 years of age. Apparently a cousin of Tecumseh's and fought in the War of 1812 next to Tecumseh. A lot of the black people, settlers that ended up coming to Durham Road came because they were supporters of I'm going totally sideways here, but anyway, because they're, I'm proud of this history, because they were supporters of the Empire Loyalists, or else they fought with the British in the War of 1812. That's why they're given that land. That's why a lot of them were here, and a lot of them escaped because of slavery. Daddy Hall, of course, is buried in our cemetery, as are 3 Victoria Cross winners, Bishop, Holmes, and Curry. The only cemetery in the world that has 3 Victoria Cross recipients to be buried there. I think that's something we can be proud of. So with all this history that I'm proud of, I got to stop and ask myself why. I'm not related to any of these people. I had no input in their success. I didn't train them, I didn't coach them, I didn't do anything. They lived here long before I got here. In many ways, that makes them they, them, those people. It really doesn't make them us or we, for us that are sitting here at this table in this era. My only connection to their history is through the place we call home, Owen Sound. They're all once one of us from this place we are proud of. All of that leaves me wondering what history of the people of this place I don't know. What vast culture and history of the people of this place can we learn if we reach out to the peoples of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation? That for me is important. I know of a story, and I think I've shared it with, at least with Brian, if not others. There's a book put out called The Indian Chief that you can find on Google Books for free, written by a guy named Van Thusen, who was a lawyer first and then publisher of the newspaper, I think, and his brother was the minister at a church. There were 15 people that signed a letter that went to Awash were being treated here in Owen Sound. Out of those 15 names that went, there were only 4 that were chiefs from the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. The rest were all white folk like you and I. Van Dusens, they were lawyers, they were ministers, they were publishers, they were business operators. At that time, it wasn't us and them, it was we and us. It was a community that came together. Somewhere we've lost that. So in a step to advance reconciliation on a local scale, an attempt to open the door to more learning and better understanding of all the peoples of this place, all the history that's gone on before us, that's why I moved that recommendation, why I feel so strongly that it's the right thing to do. A chance to cross a bridge, a new bridge, to renew a bridge, to renew a relationship that we used to have. So I support the naming of Gitche Name Wikwadong. I'm getting better at it. Bridge. Thanks. And with that, I will ask for a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Body. Well said. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, Mayor Body has moved it and a recorded vote. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Dodd,
In favor?
Councillor Gregg,
In favor.
Councillor Hamley,
In favor.
Councillor Kepke,
In favor.
In favor?
In favor?
In favor?
In favor.
In favor.
Thanks for sitting in, Brian. Thanks, Dennis, for that report, and thanks every one of you for voting for this. I think it's important, and it's a big step for us, though a little step in many ways. Down to 12C on the agenda, which is from Ms. Bloomfield with regard to council board and committee meeting calendar.
Through you, your worship, at our last council meeting, a draft council board and committee calendar was presented to council, and council requested that the city manager meet with the chairs of the committees and then bring forward a revised report. The city manager did meet with committee chairs and discuss new initiatives that are outlined in the report, as well as respective committees. Based on the feedback received at the September 28th council meeting and the city manager's meetings with the chairs, staff are recommending that the Economic Development Committee continue as a standalone committee, add the culture mandate, and change the committee name to include culture. The updated calendar is modeled on council generally meeting every other week and committees meeting at standard dates and times, with exceptions to accommodate a 6-week summer hiatus, significant municipal conferences, and statutory holidays. The number of meetings proposed in 2021 are similar to the number of meetings held in 2019. I did not compare the 2020 statistics due to the meetings we had to cancel because of COVID. The resolution in the report is to change the title of the Economic Development and Tourism Committee to include culture, approve the 2021 calendar as attached to the report, and direct staff to advise of any housekeeping changes to the calendar as outlined in the report.
Great, thank you. Councillor Kepke.
Thank you for that report. And I also want to extend appreciation to the city manager for meeting with the committee chairs. We had a really good meeting and a lot of good ideas that came out of that. And I wanted to take this opportunity to move the recommendation in the report.
Thanks. Anyone else wish to speak to it? Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Worship. I just highlight, I know that the clerk had made that announced there would be that 6-week hiatus. I do think that's very important. One, that allows our staff to have a period of time where they can actually work on the projects that we're giving them instead of always being focused on the next week's council agenda or committee agenda. So I think that's a great thing both for city staff as well as make sure that they're getting a little bit of a refresh and be able to take their vacation. That way they can enjoy their lives as well. So I'm happy that that's in there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? So I will call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Thanks, Brianna. Number 12D, Ms. Allen, with regard to the restart agreement.
Thank you, Your Worship. This follows up the COVID financial forecast that I have been bringing to Council monthly. Since our last meeting, the province did release the second phase of the Safe Restart Agreement applications. Council will recall that under the first phase, the city received $622,000. The next phase is open to any municipalities for which that first phase funding did not fully sort of offset what their COVID-related deficits are. The application is quite involved. However, it allows you to separate your COVID-related surpluses and deficits from those that are generated from other non-COVID-related activities. As such, I believe it is prudent that we are able to set aside some surplus funds in accounts where surpluses were evident that weren't driven by the pandemic. And as such, at the time I wrote this report, and it is sort of changing as I get updates all along, but I do anticipate that we should be able to support an ongoing over and above the 622,000 deficit of 190,000, and I'm hopeful we can get funding for that additional amount, allowing us to set some of those other funds aside. Required with the application is a council resolution that you direct staff to move forward with an application, as well as the worksheet that I've used to prepare the forecast.
Great, thank you. Questions? Motions? Councillor Gregg, you want to move this one?
Yeah, I can do that. Actually, I'm quite impressed with the in-depth. It might seem like a lot of work to put it together in the application, but I like to see it, because if there's one example that best illustrates that ultimately there's only one taxpayer, it's these funding programs and how it trickles down. So it's great to get supported on the local level, and I support it with the recommendation, but ultimately this whole pandemic is a financial reckoning to come at some point.
So moved. Any other discussion, questions? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Ms. Allen. Back to Ms. Coulter for 3 or 4 here.
Thank you, Worship. This report is respecting an irrevocable option on an agreement of purchase and sale on the former 8th Street water reservoir. In January of 2020, Council had received a report regarding the conditions, and you'd asked that it be flagged for follow-up in November and December. So we're just a little bit early with this report, but the irrevocable option in that agreement stipulated that the city may repurchase the land after the 2nd anniversary, which was November of 2019, but no later than the 4th anniversary, so November of 2021. The developer in this case, and the clerk may want to go to the illustration at the end of the report, but the developer has expended significant resources to obtain approval for consent, as well as site plan approval for a 12-unit townhouse development. Unfortunately, the conditions were never satisfied, and the consent approval has also lapsed. Council has a few options. 1, you could exercise the option and repurchase the lands. 2, you could delay to the fall of 2021, keeping an eye carefully on that timeline. And 3rd, you could determine that you don't wish to exercise the option. We had sold the lands for $87,000. The recommendation is that staff are recommending that Council would ask the city solicitor to provide notice under the terms of the agreement of purchase and sale that we would repurchase those lands. I should have noted that about 3 weeks ago, I had emailed this developer. We haven't heard from them in quite some time. And at the time of writing of this report, I still had heard nothing back.
Great, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
I will, with some regret, move the recommendation. I was very excited at the idea of something going in this property, which is a little bit challenging, but I will move the recommendation.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've had the opportunity to sit on the Affordable Housing and Attainable Housing Task Force, and I've learned a lot about the need for affordable housing. And I'm wondering if Councillor Thomas would accept a friendly amendment. And I'm certainly in favor of buying it back, but I'm wondering if before we relist it with real estate, that we have staff discuss with Grey County just to see if they had any interest in that property for the housing projects coming up.
I certainly don't mind adding that as a part of the recommendation, Your Worship, if that fits.
I'm just thinking that doesn't necessarily change the recommendation, but it's maybe a paragraph 2 to proceed, to have staff proceed at this point. You got that? Okay. Any other questions or discussions? Go ahead. Seeing none, so I'll call the questions. This is the amended recommendation with that amended clause. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Back to you, Pam.
Thank you, Your Worship. Along a similar vein, this is also regarding an irrevocable option on an agreement of purchase and sale. The lands are on the east side of 18th Avenue East, close to our animal shelter. The clerk has the location of the property on the screen for you there. In 2017, the city had completed an agreement of purchase and sale for these lands in the industrial park. The completion date was October 26th. The APS included an irrevocable buyback after 18 months and prior to the third anniversary, that if no building permit had been issued, we could repurchase the land. So the magic date is October 26, 2020. At this point, the development team has had no inquiries with respect to the development of these lands. The goal when council sells these serviced industrial lands is to create an opportunity for development and employment and avoid land speculation. And again, staff are recommending that council provide instruction to the city solicitor under the irrevocable option to repurchase these lands.
Great, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
I'll move that one as well, Your Worship.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, so I'll call the question. All in favor, and that is carried. Next, the temporary hospital.
Council will recall on June 29th, you'd authorized an extension to the agreement with Grey Bruce Health Services that established a 75-bed field hospital on the floor of the Harry Lumley Bayshore Community Center to end September 30th, with then a 14-day notice for the hospital to be removed. We understand that if the hospital was taken down and need to be replaced, that it would cost about $60,000 to reassemble the work. Staff have continued to monitor the status of the field hospital. At this time, there are temporary hospitals remaining in Kincardine and Hanover, and in London at the Western Fair Arena, there's a hospital with 150 beds. We again met with Mr. Gary Sims, the president and CEO of Grey Bruce Health Services, as well as Dr. Ian Era, our medical officer of health. As council is aware, that on September 19th, for us, the stage 3 gathering limits were reduced, and on October 9th, parts of our province reverted back to stage 2 in part. At this time, based on the meeting, we understand the epidemiology of the pandemic on a provincial level does not support the removal of the field hospital, and it's important to retain the facility in the Grey Bruce region to support hospitals in their ability to provide excellent care and ongoing services to this community. Staff have set a time in early December to formally revisit this issue, but we will continue to monitor the status. So the recommendation is just that council would receive the report, Your Worship.
Go ahead, Councillor Merton.
Through Your Worship, I will move that report recommendation.
I'm just going to ask one question before we go, so we're really, really clear. This does not indicate that the anything to do with the hockey team or their timetable. And if the hockey team's ready to go, then we'll make the arrangements at any point.
Absolutely, Your Worship. We'll work with the Attack Hockey Club. If they get a start date, we'll be pleased to work with them on a training camp and a regular schedule.
Just wanted to restate that, so that'll be the question that'll come up in the public. Any other questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? That is carried.
Thank you, Worship. Just a report from the health unit tonight. We continue to have full control over the outbreak in Green Bruce County. As of October 18th, 2020, in Green Bruce County is the total of 164 cases, 8 active cases, 1 case currently hospitalized, 0 deaths and 0 facility in COVID-19 outbreak, 0 schools in outbreak, 0 daycare in outbreak. Contact tracing, we're moving staff internally in the health unit to support the COVID-19 team, hiring temporary nursing staff and recruiting nursing students from Georgian College and training them in contact tracing. Working with all schools in Green Bruce to ensure safe school reopening, public health has been actively engaged in a number of activities to support school reopening in our region. Activities to date include access to COVID-19 testing has been corrected to almost all people who need a test in Grey Bruce and currently have access to same-day testing. A weekly meeting with assessment centers, continues consultation meetings with local school boards and school officials from all schools in Grey Bruce, establishing processes related to managing of cases and outbreaks in schools, media releases, media campaign with several local, provincial, and national radio and TV channels, highlighting the collective efforts of different stakeholders in Grey Bruce. This has the potential to build more trust. With that, I move receipt of that report.
Okay, so any questions for Deputy Mayor O'Leary? We'll call the question, which is receipt of that verbal report. All in favor? That is carried. Down to number 13 in the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Ms. Bloomfield.
Through you, Your Worship, on the consent agenda this evening is a memo respecting external planning policy comments from September. Third Ave East and Crowns and Fays at 925 Second Ave East. Lastly, there's the information package. A full listing is available at 13E.
Great, thank you. Councillor Tamming, do you have a...
Moved by myself, Your Worship, that City Council receives items 13A through 13E on the consent agenda dated October 19, 2020.
Great, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. Going to go back. Gray Sabo Conservation Authority, anything to report, Councillor Gregg?
I can. I'll just take a moment and actually touch upon what I was speaking to last council meeting, where I brought up the Bothwell Creek sub-watershed and kind of crossed myself up on our grades. But our grades of in Bothwell Creek are a B for, which is good for stream health, and B for good for forest conditions. I kind of mixed it up with some A's because within each category we've got the subcategories. So for instance, under forest conditions, which overall we rate as a good, our forest covers an A. So just to let council know, an important watershed that touches upon our municipal boundaries in terms of how it performed in the most recent watershed report card. But also we've got up to kind of full speed post-COVID, and in September had a couple of reports for information on how we at the Conservation Authority have move forward on a couple of the 2020 projects, one of which is tree planting. So we had an excellent tree planting presentation. In 2020, we were able to achieve 27 projects, and that amounted to 71,417 trees planted, 117.7 acres of forest created, and 11.8 acres of riparian forest created. So that is your buffer forest along important waterways, for instance, prevents erosion, unhealthy runoff, and so forth. So moving forward, or more locally, the Sydenham watershed received 4,752 of those trees over 3 projects. Of course, we're all familiar with the Sydenham watershed, as well as the Potawatomi watershed feeding into the city on the west side. Over 2 projects had 6,700 trees planted. So we have 9 projects deferred in 2020, consisting of 18,000 trees, and in 2021 we'll be looking to achieve a target of 60,000 trees planted. Additionally, we had a report on watershed monitoring and a slight expansion on what we're currently doing, and this is all monitoring that goes into the production of the report cards to which I spoke, amongst other things. But one that's important to Owen Sound is a little bit new monitoring for the Spy River, and that's one that is a small sub-watershed, runs through the north end of Chatsworth, and ultimately feeds into the Sydenham. So by expanding the monitoring, we're looking to fill in some of that report card data that we make use of. One of the ways of making use of is when we're writing grants or going after funds, this gives us a strong numerical or statistical background that we can go forward with some hard data and look for some concrete action and results coming forward. So just a couple of things, some nice information that we had come forward at the September committee meeting. So if there's any questions, I or Marion would be happy to facilitate them.
Well, that's what you're supposed to say. If there's any questions, ask Marion. Are there any questions for Marion? Seeing none, you're off the hook. Good report. Thank you. Councillor Thomas, anything on the library board?
Nothing on these minutes, Your Worship. Just to point out, they are June's minutes, which seems like a lifetime ago now. So much has changed in the meantime. And just a note on why we're seeing the June minutes tonight, the library board does not meet over the summer. So these minutes would have been approved at our end of September meeting. So nothing to report tonight.
Great, thank you. Councillor Dodd, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I would like to pull out an item of correspondence out of 13E. It would be number 4, which was presented or provided by the municipality of Meaford. For a little bit of a background, the municipality of Meaford recently went through a waste management contract. It had one bid. They received a drastic increase on their waste management contract. The reason I'm bringing this out is that their motion resembles very similar to the motion that I moved a year and a half ago about looking at working in a partnership with some of our surrounding municipalities regarding waste management contracts and some waste management services that could be possibly provided, one either in a partnership with the municipality of Owen Sound or at an upper tier level. So I'm going to read the motion that was provided by the municipality of Meaford, removing the whereas because I think that's too formal. I know we're an informal bunch. So the municipality of Meaford has recently awarded a new contract to the collection of recycling, organics, and garbage at a significantly increased price per year. Only one bid was received for their contract, suggesting a lack of competition for small contracts. There are long-term sustainability issues related to exporting garbage out of the county or country, including the burning of gas required to truck garbage a long distance. It may be more viable to make better use of local facilities, including the biodigester in the township of Georgian Bluffs and Chatsworth. Also, they said the municipality of Meaford is too small to implement significant change. In many parts of the province, the upper tier is responsible for waste collection and disposal. And finally, it states here that the council of the municipality of Meaford hereby requests the county of Bray consider the merits of delivering waste collection and disposal systems at the county level in accordance with the County of Grey Collaborative Decision-Making Framework. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I do feel Meaford is no different than Owen Sound when we come up to our waste management contracts. I think we need to start looking at any option we possibly can at finding a way that we don't get hit with these large increases when we come to a service like this. We do know that we're coming up, our discussion that we've had a year and a half ago was in 2022, we're coming up to a waste management contract. If we continue down this road, we're going to continue to price ourselves into a situation where we have one bidder. You have one bidder, you do not have a fair adjustment of what the cost of it actually is. You're going to take what is provided and what is given to you. In municipality Meaford, I'm ballparking here, but I know it was more than a double digit, maybe a 4-time double digit increase on their contract. You think of what our contract is on a waste management system and adding that by 40%. That's horrible on our long-term planning, and I think the Director of Corporate Services would probably pull her hair out if we had that contract received on our side. So I'm asking that council support this letter, send this in principle back to the county, that we're supporting and endorsing the municipality of Meaford's recommendation to look at whether it makes sense having a county-wide waste collection and disposal systems service level.
Thank you. So Ms. Bloomfield, probably best to have a motion from Councillor Dodd to support the letter from Meaford and send it to Grey County as well.
Okay, so I do have something I scribbled here. So if it doesn't make sense, someone smarter than me can definitely fix it. The City of Owen Sound endorses and supports in principle the resolution by Municipality of Meaford supporting the consideration by Grey County of the merits of delivering waste collection and disposal services at the county level.
Is that good? That's good. Okay, discussion. Others? Councillor Thomas.
Well, I'd like to commend Councillor Dodd in bringing this to our attention. I think that, we want to add source separated organics the next time round. We want to enhance our services. We don't want to be chipping away at them because the cost is becoming too prohibitive for the city to afford. So I think this is a great idea, and I think that I would encourage you to keep the pressure on Deputy Mayor O'Leary and Mayor Boddy to see this happen.
Great, thanks. Other comments? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So does anyone have anything else out of the correspondence? Seeing none, we're down to number 14 on the agenda. So first is the minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee.
Yep. Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move receipt of these minutes and just a few things to report. We reviewed the new audible pedestrian crosswalk signals for 10th Street. They're needed because the current signals are no longer serviced by the supplier and have become expensive to maintain. We also approved the accessibility features of 1393 16th Avenue East, which is a vet clinic that will be going in behind the Canadian Tire and beside the Seasons retirement home. Engineering services provided us with an update on the provincial standards for tactile walking service indicators, which are those red plates on street corners with crosswalks. And they're designed to assist the visually impaired. And finally, mobility transit usage was down by roughly 2,200 ticket purchases from the same period last year, no doubt due to COVID-19. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Marion, were you? No, he moved it right at the start. All in favor? That is carried. 14B, Corporate Services Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't take too long on these. We received the 2019 audited financial statements from BDO. They noted that we had a general surplus of the budget for the 2019 year of around $18,000. This surplus will be carried over to the next year's budget. If anyone has gone through the audited financial statements, if you have any questions, the Director of Corporate Services would be more than happy to answer them, I'm sure. The next, we received a report regarding the execution of a master services agreement with Paymentus. Right now, currently, when you're paying your taxes or your water bill, you cannot pay with your credit card. So this option would allow the user to pay with a credit card. There's no cost to the city. The system is based on the user pay model, and where the customer would be charged the 1.75% fee to use their card. And there would be no setup or maintenance costs that will be incurred by the city. So another additional service, but it's not being borne by the taxpayer. Finally, we received another report regarding the summary of awarded tenders and proposals between $50,000 and $249,999 for the last 12 months up till the ending of June 30th, 2020. Nothing out of the ordinary to discuss, just basic unit replacements and other contracts that are given to staff to delegate. So with that, Your Worship, I would move receipt of the minutes and approval of the minutes.
Thank you. Any questions? Ms. Allen, $18,000 surplus on a total budget of?
Approximately 30 million.
Approximately 30 million. So that's pretty well right in the center of the bullseye on the dartboard. You couldn't be much off of that. Thanks. Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Last, minutes of the Tom Thompson Art Gallery.
The Tom, through the chair, the Tom continues to be a very happy and optimistic place to work. The board has a great spirit among itself. And of course, we're working with our new director. I call her new. She's only been with us less than half a year. Attendance at the gallery has been very solid, and she continues to work with the Ontario Art Council in improving a grade we got. We were not seen as sufficiently diverse and inclusive, and there's some improvements, some tweaks we need to make. And she really impresses us with her ongoing communications with the Arts Council to help improve that grade, and also to reflect more diversity and inclusivity at the gallery. We're quite excited about that. We're doing an online auction for, I'd ask all those listening online or through cable to please consider participating in our online auction. If you just go to the website, you'll find out more about that. It's very difficult, of course, to have normal fundraisers at these times, and we really hope that that is going to be a successful one. So please check it out. We have photographed approximately 200 of our pieces. For those that may recall, we've funded now through monies received from another source. We're funding the photography, the photographing, and the appraising of a good number of our works to have a better idea of what our collection actually holds. So we're quite excited about that. Speaking of the collection, we have finally, and this was sort of a dormant thing for a few years, we actually have a subcommittee now dedicated to art collection. And we'll be seeking out some very highly qualified people in the community to assist us in knowing when to say yes, and more difficult, when to perhaps say no to acquisitions that are proposed for the gallery. So we're quite excited about that. The last item is the staff has been, as those who know the gallery quite well, since the financial setbacks a few years ago, we have been operating on a very slim staff basis. We've had a maternity leave and so forth, but regardless, our staff is simply not where it should be. And at some point, we will be coming to the budget for 2021 for consideration by council of an additional staff member whose job it would be to enhance our fundraising, our community presence, and to enhance our curatorial staff as well. So we're quite excited about that, and that can be discussed obviously on a later date. Unless there's any questions, I would move for acceptance of those minutes.
And are there any questions? Seeing none, I just note its own sound. Tom Thompson, I think.
Just Google the Tom, you'll find it.
That website. Yeah, good. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So at number 15, we've got no postponed matters. At number 16, we have no notices for which notice was previously given. Discussion of additional business. Councillor Hamley to start off with.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to point out that early last week, Rogers Communications was the first of what I'm sure is many wireless and internet providers to launch their 5G network here in Owen Sound. 5G will introduce new capabilities that are significantly more advanced than previous generations of wireless technology. The combination of ultra-low latency for near instantaneous responsiveness, that's a mouthful, a massive increase in the number of devices that can be connected to the network, and new applications will open a world of possibility. As we all know, digital infrastructure is going to be a crucial piece to improving productivity, innovation, job growth, and pushing our economy forward. With the latest technology, wireless industry investments in 5G networks are expected to contribute an estimated $40 billion to Canada's economy and add 250,000 permanent new jobs by 2026. Not only that, 5G will provide new and exciting opportunities for the city, such as optimizing traffic systems, making commutes quicker and easier. Of course, when I heard that point, I thought immediately of the possibility of the 10th Street corridor when we get that new bridge opened up. In closing, Your Worship, this is a critical piece of infrastructure that is another advantage that Owen Sound has moving forward to attract new residents, new development, and frankly, to help drive the economic recovery.
Great, thank you. Next on my list, I think I've got Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for disclosure, before I go into this topic, I will report that for 6 years I was working as in the commercial property and casualty sector. I no longer work in that field, so I don't feel this would be a pecuniary interest for me to bring up anymore. So one of the things I think we need to discuss about is some of the effects that are happening within our communities. And what's happening within our communities is that we're facing, especially in the hospitality, travel, and tourism and transportation sectors, we're starting to see some rapid insurance increases happening to our local community businesses. We're talking about restaurants facing 200, 300% rate renewals or a non-renewal in just flatly a non-renewal. I'm not going to bore you with my insurance slogans or anything, but the reason why these are happening because obviously insurance companies are trying to cut down on their exposures and their risks. And unfortunately, the ones who have to deal with that are the small town businesses, the ones that are in the restaurants. So as we think of, the devastation that COVID has had on our community, both through restaurants and you think of taxi cabs and transportation companies that have been decimated by COVID as it is. And then when you get your insurance renewal, you're facing a 200, 300% rate increase. And what are those options do those business owners have? Their options are to pay it with the money that they're not receiving from their customers, or to go out of business. And what does that ripple effect have when those businesses go out? You start losing the artists and all those performers who are performing there, making ends meet, performing on a Thursday open mic night. You lose the staff, all the waitresses and bartending staff that are no longer able to work there because of insurance rates. From the municipality side, taxes. All of a sudden, there's a closure of restaurants. We no longer receiving taxes from that. So I think as we move forward and what I would coming here to council and asking for your support is that if we can do a letter by the mayor, and maybe this might have to be a notice of motion, but if we could do a letter from the mayor on behalf of council and our local businesses that are struggling currently, and send a letter to both, Bill Walker, AMO, and some other organizations and associations, strongly urging that the insurance industry mitigate renewal premium increases during the COVID-19 pandemic and use it in collaboration with all levels of government to support the recovery of our community businesses. I feel like there's some individuals in our community right now who are getting beaten up even more than COVID is already doing, and anything that we can do to try to assist them in this time, I think is extremely important. So I would be asking if we could send a letter by the mayor on behalf of council and some of our local businesses.
Ms. Bloomfield, does it make sense to do notice of motion? You got it written out?
You give me a couple minutes, I could probably write something down.
Okay, we can talk slow. That might work. I think we probably want to send it right to the Premier's office as well as to copy to Bill and other municipalities.
Through your worship, a notice of motion is required unless there is a motion to waive the notice provision in the procedural bylaw.
Just thinking, if you can fumble through a notice of motion and tell us and then have the motion kind of prepared for next meeting might be the cleanest in a sense.
I'm assuming there's no rush, but I think every day that goes longer, it just means that we're not responding and not providing an insight and support.
Technically, we could have a letter written. I'm going to go to, yeah, we could have a letter written ready to go as soon as the motion goes. But Councillor Thomas.
I would make a motion to waive the requirement.
So do I need the motion before the notice to that one first? Okay. So Councillor Thomas has brought it in the right order, and that's a motion to waive the notice of motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? One opposed? Okay. So it carried. So then all the pressure's on you. Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll babble for a minute, which I can do and easily, and I'll give you a couple of seconds to see if you can pull that together. So I'm going to come back to Councillor Dodd. Two or three things that I wanted to cover in additional business, and this is sort of a segue. This week is Small Business Week in Ontario. So I encourage everyone to support small businesses and shop local. Local business owners support your kids' sports team, volunteer at your hospital, maintain the value of their houses and your neighborhood, pay property taxes in your community, and they hire your family and friends. That multi-billionaire that's selling online will never do any of that. I note also, last week we got some good statistics. The unemployment rate in the economic region that includes Grey and Bruce fell in September. I think it was from 8.9 to 7 point something, I can't remember exactly. However, overall, its net employment increased by about 1,000 full-time jobs, 1,400 part-time positions. So this is a positive sign amid COVID-19 pandemic, but most of those jobs will be in small businesses that are paying the insurance that Councillor Dodd is talking about. So I encourage everyone to shop local, go and support your local neighbors, and keep the hard-earned money that you've earned in your own community. I think the problem was decided yesterday, but the Grey Bruce Health Unit was already on it. Halloween is a go in Owen Sound. Halloween traditions are important activities for our mental and social well-being. There's some great recommendations provided at publichealthgraybruce.on.ca on how you and your family and friends can safely celebrate Halloween during COVID-19. There's some good tips to plan costumes, masks, obviously the 3 W's of watching your distance, washing your hands frequently, and carefully wearing a mask. So good recommendations for trick-or-treaters and good recommendations for those that are going to be at the door welcoming the trick-and-treaters on what we can do. So again, publichealthgraybruce.on.ca. I think once you get into that website, look for some links to the communications, and there's some great ideas set out in there to help everyone have fun and have a very safe Halloween. Councillor Dodd, how are you doing? Do I have to keep talking?
No.
Good. I'm done.
The Director of Community Services helped me. So I guess my motion would be that Mayor Body, on behalf of Council, read a letter urging the insurance industry to mitigate a renewal premium increases on hard-hit sectors during the pandemic in collaboration with all levels of government to support the recovery of our community businesses. I think the more, the bigger portion, it can be reworded or whatever it needs to be. I'm not stuck on it. I just think that we need to send a letter that addresses that we're looking for, providing some sort of support and acknowledge that these challenges are being faced within our community.
So as soon as the meeting's over, either of these two clerks are going to be wandering over saying, do you have that written down? Okay, I think everyone kind of understands it. Marion, question? Just
a question. Can we be sure that the motion includes circulating it to, you mentioned MPP and
yeah,
other,
sure.
Yeah.
Whatever individuals
Right.
feel that who needs to be included.
Councillor Merton?
Through your worship, I think it is a timely thing to do because it is Small Business Week in Ontario. I mean, when you think about it, it is a good thing to get this out and reference that it is Small Business Week in Ontario and we want small businesses to survive. So I certainly think it's timely.
Thanks. Others? Councillor Gregg?
I just want to say that I support the motion in principle. I absolutely do it, and I completely trust your background and the experience in this subject matter, Councillor Dodd. I'm not going to support it because I would have liked to have had a little bit more of a background for information. Right now, when I hear rates of around $300 a square foot for rebuild costs, right now I think there's a lot of people who right now are underinsured in their home, on their primary residences because of the escalation in property values that's going on right now. It's just unprecedented in some areas as people flock from the city. So it's kind of, it's just the broadness of that whole insurance dynamic right now. And that's just why I won't support the motion. I absolutely support it in principle, but I just would have liked a little bit more background around it.
Great. Councillor Dodd?
Your worship, so I can provide more background if that's what you're looking for. You're starting to see there's a newspaper article in the Globe and Mail. The City of Toronto just passed a similar motion on October 11th, stating support for doing anything that could support the Ontario government to propose some challenges and changes to the insurance industry. We're not talking about personal home residents, food, and who are selling alcohol sales. Those are the biggest hard-hit sectors. They're already a hard-hit sector. They're what we would call a secondary market in insurance, meaning that because they have liquor sales and there are different exposures to them, they're already rated at a higher level. So what we're talking about is that these are the individuals that are already being hit normally on a higher end, and we're talking about liability mostly, that are going to be hitting even higher, and to the point where you're saying, you know, how does ABC Restaurant Bar and Grill have the cash flow to maintain a 200% rate increase or a 100% rate increase, even a 10% rate increase when you're not bringing in any sort of revenue? That's the challenge. And, you know, and that's the problem that these people are facing. And is there anything that we can do about it? We don't control the insurance regulations, but we can stand up and say, hey, we know that this is, especially during COVID, you know, these people are only able to have 10 people in their building or, you know, 50% occupancy. How do they ever achieve the revenues needed to pay those overhead expenses? They're just not there.
That's perfect. That's kind of along the lines of what I was looking for. Thanks.
Councillor Tamming, I think your hand is going up, no?
Well, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Allen, do we have a clue what's going to happen with insurance here at the city?
We do, and unfortunately, it's not good news. We're actually just working on a report right now that we're going to bring forward to Corporate Services Committee, likely in advance of our operating budget. But as of right now, we're looking at an increase of close to 40% for annual insurance premium. And that really does reflect, as our purchasing agent has commented on, that we're in what she calls a hard market. There are not a lot of insurers out there, and they're getting out of the municipal business. As of right now, even for our renewal, I think she said 45% of our whole package, they're currently unable to find an insurer for, so they're still working through that. Hopefully it comes in under that. One of the things, the questions will be, well, would we be better off to go to market? And as we did last year, and we came in lower than we thought we were going to last year, but the fact is it'll still be the same. We'll be going out to market in a very hard market with limited insurers competing for our business. So we are anticipating that increase, and there'll be more information coming forward to you, but I think that'll be one of the big story points in this year's budget.
Thank you. Maybe. Thanks. Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. So I think that completes all of our discussion of additional business. We're down to number 18, which is motion of the Committee of the Whole Rise and Report.
Moved by myself that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
All in favor? That is carried.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thomas, that the action taken in Committee of the Whole in considering public meetings, deputations and presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business be confirmed by this council.
Thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Do we have any notices of motion? Seeing none. Bylaws?
Through you, Your Worship, the bylaws listed for approval on tonight's agenda include the confirmatory bylaw, a bylaw to execute a winter maintenance agreement with Grey County, a bylaw to execute facade and structural improvements agreement with Jacqueline Fertner for property at 920 2nd Ave East, a bylaw to execute a site plan agreement with Inglenook Crash Child Care Center for property at 1331 4th Ave West, and a bylaw to execute a second amending site plan agreement with Owen Sound Housing Company for property at 2239 8th Ave East.
Great, thank you. Councillor Tamming, you'll have
Moved by myself, seconded again by Councillor Thomas, that bylaw numbers 2020-116, 2020-117, 2020-118, 2020-119, and 2020-120 be passed and enacted.
Thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. So that completes our business for tonight. It is now 8:35. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.